that introduction. I don't want to take a whole lot of time, so can I share my screen? I have a few slides. I'm trying to share my screen. Okay, great. Great.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes. Okay, there we have. And if I could just... Okay, right. So this presentation we have been doing for the last year and a half. We've been working in research with colleagues in Chile, in Nairobi, Kenya, and Jamaica on the future of work. And I've titled this one, The Future of Teaching and Learning in the Unscaled Economy. My colleagues are Jay Casato, Micah Crump, Alicia Reed, Professor Acevedo, Professor Price, and Nia Rock, and they come from multiple disciplines. So I just want you to know that this is not just my work, this is also their work. In this limited time I have with you, and I am on a timer, I know I only have 10 minutes, I'm going to talk about trends and leadership needs for the future, education in 2020, and the impact of the pandemic. I can't say that we saw the pandemic coming, but we saw a lot of changes in education that were coming, preparing for what we're calling the unscaled economy. That, in fact, is some of the differentiation in our work. Transforming the academy in a world of uncertainty, and the pandemic has brought more of that. The future choices of leisure and work, and developing ecosystems. And I'm going rather fast. However, I'm going to make my presentation to you. For some reason, let's see if I can do this manually. Okay, great. The trends in leadership needs for the future. There was a study done by Deloitte, as one of the major consulting firms in the U.S., and they interviewed hundreds and thousands of managers to talk about, or to tell them, what do we need from the workforce that is coming. And so some of the work is what I will be talking about very briefly. And the research shows that while organizations expect leadership capabilities, they are still largely promoting traditional modes and mindset. And colleagues, what I have to tell you is traditional minds and mindsets and models are not sufficient for our post-pandemic world. And I will share with you why. When you get my presentation, you will also get hot links to the Deloitte study. But the major thing I want to highlight, and I want you to take a look at, is pre-pandemic, the ability to lead through complexity and ambiguity was the number one thing that business leaders across the world were saying they need from the new leadership. No one could have forecasted a pandemic. No one has a roadmap for what will happen post-pandemic. In fact, some of our economists, I heard a previous speaker from Yale talk about some of the Ivy institutions. The former president of Harvard Institution, who is also an economist, they're not even predicting what is going to happen until after the vaccine has hit the market, in terms of how our economies will become more resilient and reflect what we need for the future. So a lot of ambiguity. We need a lot of ability for our students and our workforce to be able to lead in that kind of environment. Leading through influence is important. Command and control is not in the worldwide workforce and economy that is coming. To manage on a remote basis, many leaders in the U.S. and many leaders in Pakistan and India, you will be working with workforces in the future that not necessarily that come from your countries, because the world is flattening. Working with humans and machines, we have to create a confidence in our students that machines are not coming to take their place. Machines are coming to help us be more productive, and we have to learn how to work with them. I will share with you some examples at the City University of New York, what we're doing with the industry and what we're doing with machines, and the ability to lead more quickly, because quite candidly, the world is changing faster. And that's the main reason we need a new leader. We need new leaders because of the technology, the pace of change, demographics in the worldwide workforce, and the changing of customers' expectations. Many of the customers are expecting more customized solutions in business as opposed to the mass productions that we delivered before. I don't expect you to read this particular chart. I have it here for when I deliver it to you. It talks about the traditional leadership outcomes and how they are not sufficient. Business as usual is not sustainable in the post-pandemic world. New leadership competencies, you'll be able to see what some of those are and what the new contexts are. So where are the gaps in leadership now that we're preparing our students for? We need more transparencies. It's not good enough for top management just to give orders and expect bottom up for them to be carried out. The bottom up needs to buy in and understand so that they can be better producers. Internal collaborations. I know in the U.S., the academic teams across the campus, the accountants may not speak to the computer information scientists, and they might not speak to others. However, in the new post-pandemic world, collaboration is going to be paramount, both in and out of the academy. And performance management, we're going to be measured like we've never been measured before, and refreshing leadership from within. This was a new finding that I didn't expect. It was that it is better, the return on the investment, to take the loyal employees that you have where they are and train them up to be your new leaders, as opposed to what we have a lot of in Silicon Valley, where there's swapping of employees and the price, and it drives the wages labors up higher with those knowledge workers. What was going to happen in 2025 years ago, there was a prediction. You'll be able to look at that prediction. It said that students will interact remotely. That is spot on. The success of tech will rely on skilled teachers. Facilitators and teachers are not going away. However, as you've talked about today in this webinar, what they do and how they do it is going to be different. The industry will think differently of our diplomas. I'll talk a little bit more about self-paced learning and stackable credentials on another slide. Students will have more of a voice. I'll also share with you how students are taking more and more control of how fast they learn, or in some cases, how slow they learn, so that they can make sure that the quality of learning is improved for them as individuals. Educators and institutions will be forced to adapt. My friends, I will tell you that many academic institutions will not survive this pandemic. We are already seeing it in the U.S. If many of our students are forced to go online, what is the differentiation from your online to another online? The professor from Yale talked about earlier making curriculum available, synchronous versus asynchronous. We are collapsing, and I believe we're going to come out on the other end for those who can change with a better academic product. And what then that, in fact, I think is going to be the impact of the pandemic. What Summers also said was that transformation inside the academy rarely happens from us. We are going to be pushed by our students. We're going to be pushed by the industry, and we will change. I'm not going to spend much time on the unscaled economy and the different technologies, because you've heard them, you've seen them. I'm going to focus on that second bullet. Instead of cloning homogeneous labor forces to support the demands of mass production, a more diverse, creative, and agile entrepreneurial teams of persons will cost effectively produce. And that's coming out of Hemant Tajay's thesis that we have embraced. We believe that production itself will change, which will spur the changes of many. Formal education, you know about, we deliver that all the time, but what is taking prevalence here is the self-directed ultra learning. Many of the students are impatient with the time it takes them for us to get them what they need. We have an example of a Scott Young. He's the author of a book called Ultra Learning. He took the entire MIT computer science curriculum and did it in 1 year. He took all the examinations. He wasn't looking for the diploma or the credentials. He wanted to be able to develop applications. Okay, so that's my 10-minute warning, so I have to hurry up, and be able to perform. And so more and more, many of our students are